Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. We have our 10-star rated expert Kartikeya Singhee talking about the new, extremely safe Maruti, not Swift anymore, just Dzire.
Just Dzire.
The Maruti Suzuki Dzire, which has the same initials as one cricketer who retired from some cricket recently.
Huh. That's a recently?
2-3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever.
Okay. In that time scale.
Right? So what's new on the MSD?
What's new on the MSD? A lot. To make waves, a lot.
No, first we'll talk substance.
Okay,
then
first.
we will talk.
No, because I thought I'll start by calling it names.
No, that's why I want to switch tack on you. So you don't get to play your plan. I get to play my devious plan. And we'll talk about the safety ratings and all of that also.
You want to talk about that first?
No, never. Then they'll never watch the rest of the video. Yeah.
This is a strategy to max out the attention span. Huh?
I want the fanboys of the rival brand to get to that point where like, oh my god, I have to watch 20 minutes of this before I can say, no, it's wrong. Global Incap got paid off or whatever it is that they're going to come up with next.
Okay.
So, first.
So you choose where you want to start.
Let's talk from under the skin to the skin. So, what's fundamentally different about this car? Is it a new generation? Is it brand new? What's going on?
Okay, awesome. I think a great place to start. We've spoken about this. You specially asked me about this when we spoke about the Swift. You said, is it really all new? And back then we had spoken about the Baleno, the Brezza, the Swift, and now even the Dzire. They are not really all new because the core platform underneath.
Not architect.
Heart-tech. Also known as heart attack. Lovingly called heart attack up until now. Right? But that line in the sand has been redrawn now. This is a new phase, which is for later.
Okay.
So this core of the vehicle is the same as before. In the sense, they have not changed it by a millimeter.
Okay.
So what that would mean is having to re-engineer a lot. Even if you, change the wheelbase by a couple of mm or whatever, the panel will change, how you have thought about the load parts and all of that will change.
Sure.
So it requires a lot of rethink. Fundamentally, all these cars have stayed the same.
Okay.
You see them in a new avatar, so to speak, in terms of the design. There are tweaks, there is more equipment to give it the freshness, and of course the hardware that it's using changes a lot, especially now as we see in the Dzire's case. It's got a new engine, it's got new suspension, all of which give it a new driving experience. So it transforms as a car in the way it drives, but the core aspect of the vehicle as to what space it has, all that is unchanged.
Okay.
It is a very familiar Dzire on that front. Okay.
So let's take one step above. You said brand new engine?
Correct.
So it is a twin turbo 2.5 liter V6, making 692 bhp.
Otherwise, how else will you desire it, right?
Yeah. I mean, Dzire requires bhp, right?
That should be the case.
But that's not the case.
But as we've seen with the Swift, Maruti is more than happy to water things down. So that
what have they done
Dzire has no hope of being exciting for when it comes to driving.
Oh yeah, this is the 92 kilometers per liter car, not the 92,000 kilometers per hour car.
Correct.
Right. So what have they done?
So it's the same engine
It's a 1 liter 2-cylinder.
1 liter 2-cylinder. No, that's I think gone too far. But they have done a 2-cylinder in the past, and that was the diesel.
Yeah.
So from the Celerio, which was actually quite a fun engine.
Yeah.
It was really noisy, like noisy as hell.
Yeah.
But it was a fun engine.
But even then, I don't think I would have enjoyed driving the Celerio even in my salad days.
Even in your?
Salad days.
Salad days. Nice.
So, sorry, Dzire engine.
So it's the same 1.2 liter 3-cylinder engine that we've already seen in the Swift. And I think how you should think about this engine and the experience that it crafts all around it is, think of it as a diesel.
Okay.
As soon as you do that...
It's a petrol, but if you think about it in diesel, you get the context for this engine better, is what he's saying.
You will immediately, everything about it will start to make sense. The high point about this engine is its efficiency. It's more than the Dzire earlier, the older 1.2 4-cylinder. It's more than that. Everything that they've done on this, whether it's the tune for the AMT gearbox, whether it's the gearing for the gears, everything is focused on fuel efficiency. It is an easy engine to drive.
Okay.
That was always a strength of the 1.2, the older one also. Here, it's even easier.
Okay.
The compromise that it brings in is that it's not as involving to drive. The old engine was a beautiful balance of being fun to drive, good to drive, refined, and yet fuel efficient, easy to drive. So it was a really, like, it was an all-star.
Right.
This engine is not an all-star.
This car is an all-star, but in different ways. We'll come to that.
Oh, nice. Okay, so the engine is now more focused on utility, and the utility is
So if you desire great fuel economy, this would be a good engine.
Yes,
But if you desire involvement, engagement, and fun to drive and those characters, then the Dzire is not the car to desire.
Huh.
Got it.
And see, that would also be okay for me. That I'm not expecting fun to drive and driving in.
No, I'm just setting expectations. I'm not saying that you should look at the Dzire and say, oh, why is it not fun to drive?
But
No.
there is a miss there, which is the refinement angle.
Okay.
Because that is the part which to me becomes a sore point.
Okay.
Every time we get a new launch, every new vehicle, if I get the sense that something is being taken away from me while I'm paying more, I feel cheated.
Got it.
And there is one distinct memory that I have on this drive specifically, because I was parked, I was making notes, and so the engine had shut off. It was fine.
Like automatic start, stop, shut off.
Right. So it had shut off because of that. And at some point it started up.
For
And
the
I
AC or whatever.
Yeah, and I got startled because of the vibration and the noise, and suddenly you're like, dude, what's up with this? Right? So that experience being watered down and being almost not cared about feels a little harsh for me.
It felt sloppy to you, the fact that that refinement was not taken care of?
See, it's not something that you will complain about straight out of the gates because it's not bad. But the more you drive it, the more you realize, yes, you have traded down on this front.
Got it.
When you compare it to the old 1.2 four-cylinder and to this, the difference is going to be there.
Correct.
The flexibility of that engine was immense. And I know that this is a building block for future, this three-cylinder engine. But we are paying a price for it today, and that really does bother me.
Got it.
It doesn't, to me, it almost feels like I will skip these options right now if I were looking at them, that it's not a rich enough experience for me.
As in you guys figure out what you want to do next in terms of the future of hybrids and transitional technologies,
Correct.
electrics, etc. When you figure it out, then we'll participate in the car market. Until then, we are quite happy to say, listen, make the car that you've got work for as long as you can, because they're all experimenting. They're all not wanting to invent new platforms. They're all not willing to commit yet. And when they commit, we will see a dramatic change in all of the aspects of the vehicle. So maybe you don't want to jump in right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a transitional phase for everybody. But because of these kind of things, the i20, for instance, I've always said the i20, the engine isn't great. It's four-cylinder. It's a very smooth engine. So the high point over there is the CVT. So if you're looking at the bigger hatches, the i20's advantage is the CVT. So, Hyundai has offered somewhere a more premium experience,
Correct.
more premium systems, let's say, to give you a better experience. Whereas Maruti and Suzuki seem to be going on the focus of efficiency. And that to me is something that needs to change.
Understood.
Because with this Dzire, you can see that they have tried to do, and this is what I meant by name calling, that they're doing a Hyundai thing. They're trying to splash you with this wow factor, which is with that striking front end, with a sunroof, doing segment first features like the 360-degree camera, the electric sunroof, that all LED lighting up front, which is that Audi-esque kind of LED lighting, and that's the other name calling you can do for the Dzire, that the front end looks like an Audi. So they are trying to create this wow factor, which are things that Maruti and Suzuki have not done in the past.
Correct.
They've actually been called laggards for features. They were always the last to bring things.
Yeah, I think there was a comment that put it very succinctly in our last thing I think on the Swift thing, saying that Maruti makes mathematically very good cars, but fundamentally uncle cars. And they don't understand coolness and sleekness and youthfulness and all of these attributes. They just don't get it.
Right. So they are so good at engineering and being rational about how to deliver this really efficient an effective product, but the emotion side of it gets almost left by the wayside.
Yeah, and experience creation will not come from mathematics. It will come from a deep-seated sense of this is a cool thing to do and this is an uncool thing to do. This will be perceived as classy and this will not be perceived as classy. And I'm not convinced that we are that country anymore that looks at that last 1 kmpl. Am I getting it or not? I'm not convinced we're all like that anymore.
Shubhi, the thing for me is, if you ask me as an individual, as a private user, I'm not a taxi guy,
Of course.
right?
Thank God.
Side business.
If he shows up and I get a Uber or a Rapido or something, dude, that'd be so cool.
Sir, 5-star dena.
Yeah, it's so cool, man. 5-star to ab sabko mil raha hai, bro. Why are you worried? And we'll come to that at the end.
So right now we've got the Swift with us, and I've been driving that around, same engine. The fuel efficiency between Pune and Mumbai is frankly ridiculous.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. I mean, you give me another 3-4 kmpl, it's going to be like, I don't know what to do with this kind of fuel efficiency anymore. I mean, it's practically like, okay, indicated, like it was between 25 and 26. I left from the city, I'd been driving in the city, it was indicating a range of 90 kilometers. And I've driven halfway down the expressway and the range is at 120.
Wow. That does sound like it's not burning fuel at all.
It's ridiculous.
And they're supposed to be putting a hybrid addition to this in the near future.
That's the idea, that this engine, this 3-cylinder, will become the power pack for the hybrid system.
Right.
Which will come in bigger cars or more expensive cars or whatever, right? But frankly, if we go from this 25, 27 on a highway to 40, I frankly don't know what I'm going to do with.
No, I think you don't understand that customer then. The hero should be worried. Who will buy the Splendor?
Yeah. Actually, the threat in that kind of a scenario is two-wheeler users.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. See, this country is focusing on crash tests, which we will come to. Anyway, more than helmets, which is a far bigger issue. As far as I'm concerned, just statistically, it's a far bigger issue because there are more two-wheelers, right? So one way to do that is to discourage two-wheeler buyers. And the best way to do this, as far as I know, is to bring the economies of scale of using a car lower. And if a car gives 40 kilometers per liter.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, like for most people, a two-wheeler is a
stepping stone. Yeah, it's a stepping stone to a car.
Everybody dreams of having a car because family needs, functional needs. And for sure, with fuel efficiency like this, it's crazy. But how much will we give up for that? And already when it's at a incredibly healthy number.
Correct.
So with this kind of fuel efficiency, you just wonder, like, I mean, how much more do I need? And at what point is it okay to say that let's prioritize the other thing?
Yeah. No, it's true. And there was a time in the two-wheeler market, just to give you another example, where 71 kilometers per liter was different from 72 kilometers per liter, which was different from 75. And the person who did 75.6 had an advantage in the market. But those years are way behind us now. Most manufacturers will say this is the ARI number, whatever it is. And these customers expect to see 61, 62 kilometers per liter. If they do, the bike is purchasable. Fuel economy is not a constraint. Anything above, bonus. Nobody's saying no to that. But it's not critical that it is 61 or 64 anymore as it used to be. And I'm saying at some point, buyers will come to that point where this last minute, last kmpl thing, we have to set it aside so that we can focus on superior experiences and turn them into people who love driving their vehicles.
I don't think that fuel efficiency is as big a deal as is we make up in our heads, because most of the people who talk about fuel efficiency as well, when you ask them afterwards, how much do you get? It'll all be, it's that much. How do you know?
Did you do it's all like a feeling. It's not a maths thing. Yeah.
Did you do tank to tank?
No.
Did you actually do the same runs and same speeds or whatever to see? No, you're just doing a ballpark.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of security blanket that you throw around yourself, saying that you bought something rational.
Yeah. And I don't know anybody who sold off a car saying, जब मैंने खरीदा था, when I bought it, I thought I'd get 14. But now I'm only getting 11, so I sold the car. No, I mean, you figure out...
Something else has to be seriously wrong for you to get to that point where you say the fuel efficiency is also a problem.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think that is one part of it for me, that the driving experience functionally has gotten better, but as an experience...
So it's easier to drive, but you're even less involved than you used to be. And it's even more encouraging of you to just let somebody else do the driving for you.
And think about it. Again, the diesel analogy.
Yeah.
It gets rumbly. It always has that boominess about it. It doesn't like being revved, but it's easy to drive. It's got great fuel efficiency. So if you think about it that way, they've brought what people love most about Maruti Suzuki back in a petrol avatar, but it's got diesel characteristics.
Got it.
So that's what they're managing to do with this engine. And in terms of the other aspect about this car, which is the suspension.
Before we go to the suspension, what about the gearboxes? 8 gearboxes. No, this is not a Hyundai. How many?
Maruti.
Oh.
So simple. There are just two.
Okay.
There's the manual and there's the AMT.
Okay.
So the manual is a 5-speed.
Automated Maruti transmission.
Yes. Yes, sir. So the manual is a 5-speed, and as usual, fantastic gear shifts. The clutch is light, so it's easy to use. No problem there whatsoever. For most people, I would say the manuals are good picks.
Okay.
But given the Dzire, and in this case, how it is an experience that's not really involving or something that will ask you to drive, I would say pick the AMT.
Okay.
Because the one advantage of the AMT is that it takes out some of that noise and vibration aspects of it. Because when you're driving the engine manually, you can lug it lower down in the rev range,
Right.
and then you hear that little
But
bit
the
of
AMT will interrupt you and say, "Hey, kya kar rahe?
the
Change the gear."
AMT will just fix it,
Right.
because it will manage the gears so that it stays smoother and quieter, and therefore just a nicer experience. And on this front, the engine, as we said with the Swift, super drivable. I could even pull it down to like as low as 500, 600 RPM and pull from there, and it does that. It has that little bit of that thrumminess and all of that at those, I mean, seriously low RPMs, which is completely acceptable.
Okay.
But the point is, very drivable. And what the AMT also does in this is the logic that it uses is max out the fuel efficiency. And so it just shifts up all the time. The first chance it gets, it senses that you're pulling off you're rolling off the accelerator, it will shift up.
So another Splendor reference for you.
So it's doing that all the time. And because it's the Dzire, you can say, yeah, fine, I just want to cruise around comfortably. And so that's okay. I just want to cut out the hassle and make this a peaceful commute. For that, the AMT works fine. If you're somebody who's looking for a more involving driving experience, of course, the manual will be better, but then the trade-off is something in terms of NVH that you will have to keep in mind. So you'll work it a bit more.
So it's a slightly noisier car than you expected inside, and slightly more vibey at certain revs because of the nature of the engine.
Yes. Okay. And I think the thing with 3 cylinders is that there's always that dull background, like this hum, which doesn't go away. Okay. It's not the obvious sounds, but it's that almost invisible sound that creeps up on you as you spend more time with it. And that's the bit that I do not like.
Is that what the British motorcycle media calls character when they speak about Triumph triples? Don't answer that. We're going to just move straight. I'm just kidding. It was there, so I took it.
Okay.
Suspension.
So this brings to the other aspect of the Dzire, which is the genuine step up, and that's the suspension.
Okay.
We saw this with the Swift, and on the Swift, to me, it felt a bit strange because we called it SUV-like in its ability to deal with bad roads and broken bits and all of that. But in the Swift, you wanted more involvement, so you would have traded off some of that, the SUV aspect of it, for more involvement. But it's a more distant Swift in the driving experience. But here it makes sense. Okay. The Dzire is not about involvement. So that suspension, that it doesn't feel that nippy when you turn it, it has a bit of body roll, that's okay.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's not an enthusiast vehicle.
And it's a very well-mannered tool. So even when you drive it fast through corners, it's not connected, the steering feels vague, all of that. But it holds its line. It feels confident. It's actually impressive how well it behaves. And the suspension for me is an absolute highlight. There's no two ways about it. It makes me wonder. I said to the folks at Maruti there that you should be making an SUV on this. Because if you think about the smaller micro SUVs, you don't really have one. There's the Exter, which is more of a city hatchback in a taller form. You have the Punch, which looks very boxy and
which
tough.
Also has excellent ride quality.
It has good ride quality. It has good space. It has those SUV attributes. They fixed the suspension now. And if you think of this kind of a suspension setup in an SUV body style, I can immediately see magic.
So that would be the Espresso facelift.
Oh my God.
No, don't answer that either.
He's like lighting things up on fire today. Okay. No, Espresso is too small, and no Espresso. No big Espresso.
No, you're not.
I'll tell you which one they... No, wait. I'm dead serious. What they need to do is give the Ignis its due. The Ignis has been lying in the background without any attention.
Okay, I'm glad you got that out of the system, but you're not understanding. I'm improving the automotive four-wheeler world of India by saying espresso facelift becomes Dzire SUV.
Espresso facelift
Yeah.
becomes Dzire SUV. Oh,
Then we
okay.
don't have the espresso to look at
Oh,
anymore.
okay,
We
okay,
solve
okay.
one thing.
Do away with that
Yeah.
nameplate. Okay. ठीक है.
We'll call it the Dopio, which means the double shot of espresso.
Nice.
Good luck selling that name in India.
Okay. So the suspension, tire sizes, all of that are the same. Um, but the way it rides, the way it drives, the way it behaves. So, there's this test that we'll do when we ride on the edge of the road and you step off onto the shoulder. So there's a step and, the surface is not smooth there. And you just see how it behaves when it tracks through that. And on this, at times you couldn't make out. It was so,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, so nice and smooth through that. The change of gradient, the bumpiness, all of that. Really impressive suspension. So for me, a clear highlight. Handling wise, I said it was all right. Not really involving, but a safe, steady, predictable car.
That leaves us with the cabin and we'll come to that at the end.
Right. So the cabin is the area where you will see a lot of change because it gets the dashboard from the Swift. So it's that new design, modern by Maruti standards and Suzuki standards. But
Oh, I love how he says modern and then immediately has to throw a caveat into it.
yeah, because it's a step up for them, but it's not a step up where it matches anybody else, right? If you compare it today to a Tata or a Mahindra or a Hyundai or a Kia, my God, Kia, I mean, it doesn't even come in my frame of reference when you look at a design like this because they feel like they're from two different worlds altogether. So yeah, so the dashboard is a step up, but it's all right. I think by and large, you're not going to look at it and say, "Wow, this is the reason why I bought this car." Or your friends will look at that and say, "Wow, that is cool." It's all right. It's a step forward. They're using beige all across the cabin to give it that more premium and airy feel, and it does work. It does help the car for sure. Equipment wise, I already told you that is one of the areas where Suzuki and Maruti have put in, clearly have focused. So it's got that electric sunroof.
Not helping with population control anymore. I see the change of policy.
And it's got a 360-degree camera. It's got ambient lighting for the footwell. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because these are not things that we expect from Maruti Suzuki. They are always the last ones to do stuff like this, and in this instance, they're the first ones in this segment. And clearly, that's a change of mindset at some level.
And somewhat of a mind change because it's not like they fundamentally invented something new.
So these things have been done. The things that made this car great as a compact sedan still remain as is. So
yeah, and if they don't change the fundamentals of the platform, then they'd be in the same place. And it was a good car the last time around,
and
if I
we
remember
thought that
correctly.
there would be a little bit of a change. There could be some improvements maybe because on paper, if you look at it, length, wheelbase, this, that and all is the same, but the height is different. So I thought some changes happened to the chassis. And then we were told that it was a change of reference point. I didn't quite get it until next day I was driving the car and I was looking at it. And then I realized, oh, it now gets a shark fin antenna. So the shark fin antenna is the highest point.
This is awesome. The next time you're out driving a car and your antenna is out or not out, I'm going to say stuff like this only to you. Please retract your antenna, it's not looking nice.
See,
The radio isn't working because you've not opened out your reference yet.
no, the shark fin antenna is a hard point, right? Whereas for a
No, I get it. They could have just said that.
in engineering terms, right? So the reference point was the shark fin antenna. So which is why the height of the car on paper has gone up. But actually the entire shell, the skin will look different, but the shell itself is the same. And that's an interesting point that we'll come back to later as well. So the dimensions of the car, the cabin and the space that you have on the inside are unchanged.
Got it.
Which is a good thing because it was already a good compact sedan. It was friendly enough. As we've sat in cabs, we've often appreciated that, that back seat is good.
Yeah, it's good.
You don't mind spending time in it. But I think they also missed out on opportunities to make this a genuinely better backseat oriented vehicle.
Okay.
Okay. We said that they've done a Hyundai thing, and they could have done another Hyundai thing in this regard, which is the Hyundai idea of always kicking up the seat base angle so that you have more support.
Right.
And this is a hack you can use any vehicle that you sit in. If you end up sitting cross-legged like this, it means the under thigh support is low. You're not being able to stretch out, which is why you're forced into this position. And that's normal in the Dzire.
Correct.
Could they have, and I'm only 5'6". So if you're taller, for sure you will feel the need for better under thigh support. So could they have done better for this? Yes, they could have. Have they? No, they haven't. They could and should have improved the cushioning for the seats. And this is something I've seen Maruti do. And this is absolutely a guesstimate as of now. I think the cushioning for the seats on the Dzire are softer than on the Swift.
Because that's the enthusiast car and this is the family's car.
I think so. I didn't feel that they were supportive enough. They have the shape and all, but the cushioning felt softer. And definitely in the backseat. Again, we spent time from the hotel to the airport. I spent in the backseat. And my constant feel was that the edge was
Low.
too soft. It was low and it was soft, so it kind of kept rolling away from you, right? And that doesn't enhance comfort. That softness actually takes away from comfort.
This is a point that needs to be made. I've made it a lot in the context of motorcycles, and I think it translates. Soft foam can feel good for the first 5, 8, 10 minutes. After that, soft foam doesn't support the weight that you're putting on it. It generates pressure points because the foam will crumple, and then it'll have harder seams and creases that you'll have to deal with. So it's a great way to sell you the idea of a comfortable, luxurious car. But if you truly want a comfortable, luxurious car, then the foam cannot be soft. It will be pretty stiff. And when you sit on pretty stiff, it first will not react to what you do. But once it starts to adjust with a little bit of heat, with a little bit of time from your body to your shape, then it becomes truly comfortable.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I found the hack for it, a solution. I mean, I didn't find it, but I realized that people are using this hack and a solution almost like second nature, because I wanted to reference it to the older Dzire just to be sure where it's at. And I found a cab driver parked on the side of the road with the previous gen, and he was having nariyal pani. So I went, parked this car next to him, and I asked him, "Are you okay with me looking at the two cars? And why don't you come along as well?" And he also came and he took a look, and I asked, "Do you think they're different in terms of space?" He said, "No, they look the same. There's no difference." And I sat in his car. I obviously asked him, and then I sat in his car, and he had seat covers. So automatically, because of and he had those leatherette type seat covers.
With a little bit of foam built into it anyway.
So you had a little bit more support, you had a little bit of more firmness. So immediately it felt like, this could be the solution you use for seats like this. So you can tweak it a little bit, but getting the right kind of seat covers would also be important.
So it's like an Apple iPhone, right? Maruti is encouraging the cottage industry of seat cover manufacturers to produce better results so that their seats don't have to be awesome.
Actually, if there are any seat cover manufacturers, you should actually think about creating these add-on covers so that it takes care of this issue altogether. That would be great.
A seat cover with a cut built in.
Oh, that would be hard, but at least get the cushioning right, the angle right, fix that. That can be done. That would be super.
Yeah, something that the OEM should just natively do anyway. I'm just saying.
Anyways, so I think those are the small things. I think the back seat should have improved on, and the cushioning angle applies even for the front seats. Should have been better, and I don't see why. And Maruti and Toyota as well, because last when we drove the Rumion, I think I've taken it too far. With the Rumion, this cushioning was so soft, it was outright tiresome.
Okay.
So the idea when it just goes out of hand is just unmanageable, which is why I think this needs to be fixed and it should be done better.
Got it.
So fundamentally, that's the story of the cabin as well, that it's familiar. It could have been better in terms of actually being a better backseat vehicle. And in this, like I said, compared to the older car, and Maruti themselves have said that it's the same There's no difference to the package itself. And by package, it means the vehicle core design. And the question in my head was then, why do I buy this over a Baleno? And as chance would have it, when I landed in Pune, my cab was a Baleno. So I got to sit in that and, finalize my thoughts kind of. And in the Baleno, headroom was about the same. I would have thought that maybe, in this is one thing. With the sunroof, you will feel some of the headroom being eaten into visually. The roof is scooped out. So it doesn't interfere. But if you're taller, it will feel a little close.
You shouldn't get the sunroof anyway. It's a waste of your money.
With or without the sunroof. You're sitting slightly reclined also to liberate more headroom. So for taller people, you will feel that you're sitting a little close to the roof. That is there.
Okay.
Baleno has just slightly a little bit more headroom. It has more knee room. It's a bit more supportive. So technically, that would be the better backseat.
Okay.
Except it doesn't feel as airy and as the sense of space in the Baleno is not as good as in the Dzire.
Got it.
It's to do with the the glass house, whatever, the way the windows and.
But is a sedan shopper really looking at the hatchbacks at all?
Why shouldn't they? Is the question.
Because I don't want to share the box I am in with my suitcases, man. I mean,
correct. So see, that's the whole premise of this sub 4 meter sedan space. That it's an idea in our heads that you have not really arrived until you bought a sedan.
Correct.
And so if it's a sub 4 meter sedan, so be it, but it works as a idea for us.
No, it is an aspirational segment, right? You're going to be amazed by the next products that will come out. And hopefully you will desire some of them.
Yeah. Nicely done, sir. So the idea of just wanting a sedan for the sake of a sedan is obtuse, but if that is what it is, then these are your choices.
Got it.
And there are fewer choices. Fundamentally, if you were expecting the new Dzire, and by looking at it, we haven't spoken much about that, but by looking at it, you could think that this is the shake-up that the segment wanted, needed, or you as a buyer were hoping for. It's not that. That's more about perceptions rather than the core attributes of the product.
Yeah, it feels like an incremental upgrade that does a few nice things and a appeal upgrade, which is a little bit flashy for your taste, clearly. But maybe people will like it.
Yeah, that's completely different. I think for me, from a design standpoint, you want to make it flashy, that's fine. It just needs a better balance, which I don't think is there. At the front, they've managed to make it look wide. So that is one goal achieved. Saying that, it should have more presence. Sure. The rear should be more striking. Sure, it's there. But how do the two ends speak to each other? And what happens in between? That is the part that's a little unsettled.
Got it.
So in bits and pieces, you can look at it and say, oh, interesting. But when you look at it as a whole, it's like, it's not kind of fitting.
Got it.
Okay, that's basically it. And sure, we as a country, we have audiences of all kinds, and our experiences are only just growing. So with every car, we will mature and grow, and sure, it's okay. What you think of the design is...
Whatever design you desire is the one that you should get, that's fine.
Okay, so we're done with that. Boot space is the same as before.
404 liters.
Something, I don't remember what. A little less than that, not 404.
392.
4, okay, no. So it's a little lower than that. We'll put the number up.
It's, if I remember correctly, where did I read it? 4 liters more it is than the last time. So it doesn't add up too much.
It's not much. So it's pretty much the same. And the boot has been one of the smaller ones in the segment, any which way. So it's not a dramatic change. What you do get as a spare wheel is a space saver. So that's also factored in. You do get a spare wheel, thankfully. That's still there. Yeah, so that's the basic layout of the car. What else did I miss?
And then when one of these Dzires went to the UK and got rammed into something, then everybody flew into a tizzy also.
Okay, yes. You want to start?
The Maruti Suzuki Dzire, as far as I can tell, is the first Maruti ever to have a 5-star crash test rating.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And all the signs and symbols, which you will explain next, suggest that this is not going to be an exception. This is going to be the rule. Right? So all the fanboys who were not expecting this result and had a heart attack, it's part of the platform that they've changed. And they've changed it, how sarcastically should I put it? Massively.
Yeah, it's really massive. because the core structure of the car is the same as the previous gen Dzire.
Which they also crash tested, and that earned 2 stars on the same day, as it were.
Yeah.
Right. So, background: global NCAP tests, not Bharat New Vehicle Assessment Program. I read a lot of tweets which said, how could they possibly have paid off global NCAP, which is like taking the dog by the tail and wagging it as hard as you can, instead of saying, hey, listen, how did they do that? Which is a valid question. And we're not going to sensationalize this. I don't think we believe in it. But there are 2 things. One, this is now a 5-star crash test rated car, global NCAP. Do with that rating what you will. It certainly breaks a lot of perceptions for Maruti. We have 2 stories on the channel that we'd like you to see. I'll leave links to both in the pinned comment. The cards, I don't know that you'll find them, so pinned comment is safe. So one is the idea that there is perceived safety and real safety, and they don't always match, right? You press the skin of a car and see the metal is really tinny. It must not be a safe car. This is a perception. That skin, nothing connected to safety at all, right? On the other side, we have a second story, which is from the podcast, which is called Disconnect, where we did an episode discussing what crash test ratings are about, how do they create those ratings, what do they actually imply, and what should you interpret from those results. And our big conclusion has always been, step 1, learn to drive better, conduct yourself well, have those skills, then rely on the crash test structure of a car as your last line of defense. When you reverse this process, you're just in trouble, no matter how many stars your car got. Is it not true that a 5-star car rated that a 5-star rated car would be superior to have an accident in than a 2-star car? Yes, absolutely. Why in a crash? And if you externalize this every single time, saying accidents happen to me, you're effectively saying that you are a helpless human being trying to get to the other side of your life, which, if you think about it, is a pathetic way to live. Right. Now, how did they get the 5-star car rating, Karthik?
Good, by adding 300 kilos of materials. There's no other way of doing it.
And they're giving 29-30 kilometers per liter before they give the hybrid. My God, what did they make the car out of? Titanium?
No, solid Loha, man. Loha is important. Okay, no, seriously. The reason.
No, wait. I think you're leading them on, because this car is only 40 kilos heavier than before, which you told us in the suspension section.
Correct.
I am listening.
So see, all they have done is taken the same structure and used more high strength materials at the right places, so that its crash performance is better. Okay, and that weight gain, also the 40 kilos, also includes the 6 airbags, which we haven't spoken about, which is standard now on the Dzire.
And wait, the 2-star rating was because there were only 2 airbags in that car, and it was below the number of airbags needed to earn the 3rd star, not the crash performance itself.
So that's the other thing that you need to keep in mind, that because the old Dzire got 2 stars, and somebody was making a joke that, yeah, you'll still be traveling by a Dzire that's not safe for much longer than the 5-star rated one, because they are the cabs. But let's remember that for the GNCAP tests, for you to be able to go beyond a particular star rating, you have to have some equipment as standard.
Right.
If you don't have that, it cannot go further.
Yeah, in fact, I'd go so far as to say, we've discussed this, so I won't belabor the point. If you see a 0 rated crash test, a 0 rated is a disqualification, which doesn't mean a poor crash. It means some amount of equipment that is the basic required by that standard to achieve a star.
Correct.
Doesn't exist. And it could be as simple as, for example, Latin NCAP might say, we need electronic stability programs as standard if you are to earn any stars at all before we crash test it. And when a car shows up without the electronic stability program, no matter how the results of the crash test are, it will remain a 0-star car because it doesn't have the electronic stability program.
And that's a great example, because the Baleno, which got 0 stars in Latin NCAP, is not because it was crap in terms of crash test performance. Its body shell was rated stable. But it just doesn't have the mandatory requirements in terms of ESP or 6 airbags.
Correct.
And therefore, it is disqualified. Correct. So,
yeah, I'm sorry. Again, not going to belabor the point, but also remember, Latin NCAP not equal to Euro NCAP, not equal to Australian NCAP, NZ, Oz NCAP, whatever they call it, ANCAP,
ASEAN and
ANCAP. Not equal to China's equivalent, not equal to Japan, which has interfered with these cars crash test ratings before, not equal to Bharat New Vehicle Assessment Program, not equal to Global NCAP. They all, not equal to the IIHS, the American thing. They all have their own ways of interpreting how should a crash test be conducted, what tests are mandatory, what are optional, how do you earn the 5th star, etc., etc., etc. So when a car goes to another market and earns a certain number of stars, honestly, unless you read the standard and correlate the standard, those numbers mean nothing to you. You do not understand them.
So this is a big step, undoubtedly. Are we surprised by it? No. Never have we thought that they are incapable of delivering this or that the cars were poorly made in the first place. That they could do more? Yes. But have they done enough? Yes.
Finally. But to be the
No,
devil's
for me,
advocate.
I also said in the past, before this 5-star rating, right? And we've said this before, as an Ignis owner, what do I look for? I look for a car that I'm comfortable driving and confident with for much longer. And that's a combination of the suspension, the engine, the chassis, all of that. And today, the Dzire getting it, and which is why we're pointing it out, the weight difference is 40 kilos, including new equipment. So it's not like they've gone and created this new tank of a chassis and therefore this performance has come. You would see an impact of that even on the fuel efficiency and the drivability. They've improved all of that, right? So the core of the car is where it was earlier. They have made changes to, well, get to this. Because keep in mind, Suzuki was always focused on the Japanese standards and J and cap used to be at 55 kilometers an hour. And that is where this whole fight came about, or rather, let's say this two highly aggravated viewpoints came about that it's not safe because Suzuki was like, we are engineering for 55 kilometers an hour. That is what it was in Japan, right? And Global NCAP was doing 64 kilometers an hour, and that's a higher speed test. And tomorrow you take any car that's tested for 64 kilometers an hour and is a 5-star car, and you go and test it at 75 kilometers an hour, you see what happens to its crash test rating.
1.5 stars. Thank you for showing up. Participation certificate.
So that will happen. So just understand this, and it's great that Maruti Suzuki have made the Dzire stronger, safer, and you can assume it's assumption, but considering that the core of the cars are shared between the Dzire and the Swift, we look forward to seeing those results. I would love to see of the Baleno as well, what it does, how it manages, because in the Baleno, and Baleno may have been a genuine problem, but in the Baleno, the weight went up almost 100 kilos, whereas here it's only 40 kilos. And that's without 6 airbags and all of that.
Correct.
So Baleno, they did some serious beefing up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over there.
Okay.
As of now, I think the one thing that I want to call out again on this safety front, and it's the simpler stuff that we want Maruti Suzuki to do more, is to provide electronic stability aids, which are crucial, and these should be standard. And relative to the Swift, this is getting a tire pressure monitoring system, a proper one, which means it's giving you pressure readouts. But you can see that this was kind of a solution that they figured out on the way, because the display for this is only on the touchscreen infotainment, whereas usually
it should be on the MID.
yeah, it should be on the MID. So it's not over there, and this should be standard. It's not standard. As a company, and any of the companies that are talking about safety, and you want to go beyond star ratings, I think it's mandatory that you should have a TPMS. Hatchbacks should have rear windscreen wipers and washers, so that in all kinds of conditions that we have in India, you can be driving safe and feel more in control. And with every manufacturer, I think it should be mandatory when you're selling a car on the basis of star ratings. It's also your duty to tell the buyer that that is your last resort. That is when nothing else works, that will be there as a cushion. It's not a fail-safe. It's just there as a cushion.
We should start a country and use the same strategy to invite affluent immigrants to come.
Please
We'll say we have a great country. We won't talk about the weather. We won't talk about the beaches. We won't talk about the economic opportunity. We'll just say our army is so awesome, nobody can invade us.
Oh, wow.
We have a 5-star army. Come live with us.
Yeah, that will invite a certain kind of audience, no? It's actually a great example. Yeah.
You see?
Yeah. It's, yeah. That's a good one, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a big step forward, and all of this with the additional equipment, with the higher safety standard, with the new appeal, the new functionality, the better functionality, the prices have largely not changed much.
Okay.
The base has gone up by about 20 to 30,000 rupees, and at the top it's about 80,000 rupees.
Wow. So many more airbags for such little money. That's awesome.
So, and I'm glad, because if it were significantly more expensive, I don't think they could do that. It's already pretty expensive. But if they did that, then that poor refinement,
Yeah, it would all stick in your craw even
it
more,
would
right?
be properly downright annoying then.
Yeah.
In that case, I would have felt like I'm properly being cheated. And that's, I actually said this in my head when that startup happened. I actually said to myself, I feel Garib now. It was very annoying. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
It's,
because my image of somebody cranking the thing and the whole thing shaking to life is a diesel, obviously, but it's usually like the commercial class diesel vehicles that do that. Like the old Qualis, for example. If
yeah,
you
yeah,
had a
yeah.
hand on the gear lever when you
Yeah, yeah, it
started
would
it up,
just rock.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would give you a hand like a little workout before it started up,
And
right?
to be fair, that it's not specific to this Maruti Suzuki three-cylinder engine. We've seen it even with four cylinders, like the VW 1.5. When it does stop-start, when it starts up, it also has this roughness about it when it starts up, and it's not a pleasant experience.
Correct.
Especially when a car is 20 something lakhs,
Yeah.
it's all the more shocking, and which is why we mark it down for that as well. But I keep coming back to this is, we've said this, that we are in a moment of transition. We are kind of facing the brunt of it in all these things, because the companies are reconfiguring what they're doing and how they're going to do things in the future. So we are
Yeah, and it's not
trading
just
down.
reconfiguring, it's also a lot of hesitation. They're not sure how to commit their money and plans.
I don't think there was any proper reason to ditch the 1.2 four cylinder, other than the fact that they needed a less expensive three cylinder, which they could then marry with a more expensive hybrid tech, so they would manage the cost somehow. I think that's at the core
Yeah,
of it.
and it's not even clear if hybrids are next or will they get legislated out and therefore electrics are next and therefore should we go all in on electrics, not go all in on electrics, keep our options open. And this transition is what is causing all of these weirdnesses to happen.
And so at times like this, and we've said this before on motoring, if you have a good car that's running for you, it works well, hang on to it. Tide through the next couple of years. When you find that vehicle that really clicks for you, you'll know it and you'll just go for it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, think about it. Maruti did just that, right? They built the Swift and they stretched it out a little bit and said, this will do as a sedan. They didn't go all out and build a brand new sedan, right?
Yeah.
The Baleno is the bigger car, etc. But they didn't say, you know what, the next Dzire should come off the Baleno because we'll get more space out of it. No, they took the Dzire and they stretched it and said, this is enough. And what he's saying is, in this transition, maybe what you have is enough. You don't really need to upgrade yet, because when the changes start accumulating, then they will be much more bigger changes. There'll be more useful changes, and vehicles will change in more fundamental ways than we see today. Today, we're seeing a lot of incremental change. I don't know that you want to participate in that.
Yeah.
Not unless you have a car that's really old or you're really suffering with it. That's the point I think you're making.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're value centric, then you should be maximizing value. And if you have a good vehicle right now, hang on to it, stretch that value. If you don't, then it's a different question. But keep these pros and cons, or the weights that hang, balance them out and see how it works out for you. Right? Prices we've covered.
Yeah.
We've spoken about.
We've
the
done
design.
everything.
Yeah. Alrighty then.
So this is the quick summary of the Maruti Suzuki Not Swift Dzire, correct? The name is not Swift anymore. Plastic plate removed. Apart from that though, it is still very much the Swift's larger sister. No, that's wrong. Bigger sister.
Whatever.
Right? In the sense of the Swift is a 2-box and this is a 3-box car. What have they done? Not a lot, but it makes a difference. Okay. Key differences that you need to know. One, far more fuel efficient than before. Suspension quality has gone up quite a bit. And this car, in a crash test situation, does a lot better than the last car did. These are the 3 big highlights. Okay, let's go through that in the order. First, the engine. You're getting a 1.2 liter, 3-cylinder, naturally aspirated engine, brand new to this car. It has some vibration and refinement issues at the bottom, but it's an extremely drivable engine, which is very, very normal for Marutis to make. We've seen this engine do outrageous stuff on the Swift already. And we're expecting that when we get to test this car, the numbers will be, I don't know, 25, 26 out on the highway, some big numbers like that. This is not an exciting engine to drive though. So if you desire engagement, involvement in your driving, then the Dzire is the wrong car. That name really trips me up, man. But if you just want a car that is a useful tool, returns good fuel economy, drives reasonably well, you'd be doing well. 2 gearboxes, manual, AMT. Manual, very nice to use, but Kartik says, if you're not interested in driving, which is probably why you got the Dzire, think about the AMT instead. It keeps the engine in a sweeter spot more often, so it feels like a smoother car. It's easier to drive. Economy is great. You won't struggle. It's also not a very expensive car compared to the last one. Prices go up by between 30 and 80,000 rupees depending on the variant, so it's not even become a heck of a lot more expensive, which might lead you to believe that the car has not become more premium in feel, but it has. So there's a completely new skin, which Kartik is not classifying as a classically good design or an upmarket design, but it looks a little bit flashy. And the attempt to make this look like a more upmarket car, it's obvious. Some parts of it work, some parts of it don't, but it's subjective. You take your call. The top model, you will see some interesting German details, like a shark fin antenna, which BMW pioneered, like a multi-element LED headlight, which Audi did, and then you see that arrow-shaped kind of thing on the taillight as a detail, which is, in my head, a Mercedes-Benz type of thing, but hey, they wanted to make it upmarket. They reskinned the car. It looks a different way now, slightly more upmarket than the last one. Awesome. Under that skin, it was already a good car in the last generation, still is. So this is a reasonably spacious, comfortable interior. Now in beige, which gives it a sense of space, etc. The equipment has changed. It's slightly more upmarket than before. The rear seat was already a comfortable seat, still is. Did Maruti do any work to improve that quality of comfort, space, etc.? Unfortunately, no. So your under thigh support was low last time, still is. You'd still have a lot of space, etc., etc. The foam is a little bit soft. Watch out for this. Kartik's suggestion is maybe you want to look for seat covers that raise the front of the seat a little bit under your thigh, give you more support, and have firmer foam, which might help you avoid it. Around city trips, you should be okay, but firmer foam is generally better for a longer life in the car. You've also got a touchscreen in the middle. You've got the driver's instrument display. The top models have a standard tire pressure monitoring system, which is awesome. You've got a sunroof, which is pointless. Don't get one. What did I miss? Right? Now, the final highlight of this car is the crash test rating. This car is now 40 kilos more heavy than the last one. It's got 4 extra airbags compared to the 2 on the last one. And this 2 airbags is one of the reasons why it was only a 2-star rated car the last time. And the dichotomy seems to be that for some reason, Suzuki believed that meeting the Japanese standard was enough. And if that caused a problem with the Indian or global NCAP standards, that was okay, that was fine. But they knew the solution to that. The solution is here. They've done minor tweaking to the platform with higher strength materials. They've not done a lot, honestly. That is enough to get them the 5-star rating. So on the safety front, you've got more airbags, you've got a stronger structure, it's a 5-star rated car. Do with that information what you will, because we've said this before in the context of cars that didn't have great ratings. We've said this in the context of cars that have great ratings. The ratings imply a car that will do well in a crash, and that's your last line of defense. What you'd like to do is not have a crash. To not have a crash, you'd like your car to drive well in terms of its basic manners. You should be able to control the car well. That's your contribution to this. If you're not willing to go through the first 2 steps and rely on the 3rd step alone, you have the whole thing backwards. And again, 2-star versus 5-star in a crash, yes, the 5-star does better. I'm asking the question, why are you in the situation where you're having a crash at all? And not all crashes are caused by somebody else. If you think like that, you can't improve your driving. That's the problem with thinking like that. Okay, fundamentally, Dzire, slightly more upmarket now, not a lot more expensive, much safer in terms of a crash test rating, more equipment inside the car, very different to look at, slightly more upmarket to look at. If you like it, tell us in the comments, but that's the full picture of the car. What are we doing next? We are currently testing the Swift. We should have a view story at some point, and we're hoping that the Dzire will come, and then we'll have view and balance stories on that.
Talking about the screens, those bezels are so large, man. They're just massive. Weird. Anyways.
Just for your reference, Maruti, if you're going to put a touchscreen in a car, watch the size of the bezel. The thinner it is, the more modern the car looks.
This is unnecessarily chunky. Yeah. That was that. And actually, since you're talking about what happens next, Amaze will also happen.
Yeah.
And I am...
will they have a variant called Balls? Then you can tell somebody, right? I drive the Amaze Balls.
What do you mean? You want a...
How is your new car? Amaze Balls. And you're like, wow, you already love the car so much. No, that's just its name.
Wow. Maybe Honda will listen and make one variant, special edition Balls.
It'd be awesome, right?
I hope YouTube doesn't block this video because of this.
I was talking about...
Yeah, sure.
Like basketball, football.
Yes. For the sporty people, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
You know, it'd be so nice, right? Variant called Mint. How are you
Please
reacting to
carry.
your new car? I'm in amazement.
Okay. So how, and that will have a four-cylinder engine still.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed.
No hybrid?
I don't know. Unlikely. Absolutely unlikely. If they didn't bring it to the city, I mean to the Elevate,
Hmm.
then what's the chance that a small car like that will get it? It'll be a sustenance kind of thing. I think that is how it will continue. But
It's a facelift, it's not a new generation.
no, it's a new generation. It's a new gen. So that's interesting that almost back to back you're seeing these two sub 4 meter
Correct.
sedans.
Which believes what the Hyundai Aura or something like
Yeah,
that too.
correct. Aura was done a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
And now we'll see this. Let's see. And the Amaze was a good sedan.
Hmm.
That it was always a good sedan. And see, the cool thing about the Amaze was they used to have the CVT automatic for the more premium experience. They still have now the 1.2 liter four-cylinder engine. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those configurations come through. It'll be interesting for somebody who's choosing right now in this space. It'll be interesting.
Good.
Done.
Done?
Yes, sir.
Should we sign off?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for watching MotorInc First. That was the Maruti Suzuki Dzire, or MSD as I like to call it. If you have any more doubts about this, you have questions that we didn't answer, please do leave us a comment. We try and answer all of our comments and we'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. And hopefully we'll see you on the next episode of MotorInc First.